Here's another special edition of Misquote Monday, featuring previously released episodes. Did C.S. Lewis really say, "Children are not a distraction from more important work, they are the most important work"? Who likes to be distracted? Most people don't. For me, it's distracting to see this quotation falsely attributed to Lewis when we know the person who actually wrote it. More on that in a moment, along with a few quotes related to this topic confirmed to be by Lewis. While Lewis wrote the famed Narnia stories, are you surprised he only ever had 2 stepchildren, and this was less than 10 years before he died? Who made the statement in question? In 2012, Dr. John Trainer shared it in a Facebook group, noting the quote was a repurposed and modified version of an old customer service expression he knew. What did Lewis say about children? You might be surprised. Take a look. Learn more about fake Lewis quotes from my book or online articles. Did C.S. Lewis really say, "You can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending"? A lot of people, and even a football team, have been named as the author of this quote. In 2015, quoteinvestigator.com did all the heavy lifting about the possible sources of this quotation, which has a few variations. I came across Lewis's name associated with it in 2017 and wrote about it. The following 2 years, my article was viewed almost 25,000 times. Despite this, memes with Lewis's name associated with this quote continue to be shared on social media. Who said it? We don't really know, but check out my online article and quoteinvestor.com's for details. Did C.S. Lewis really say, "You are never too old to set another goal or dream a new dream"? When I wrote about this quotation back in 2015, I was the first to debunk Lewis as the author, despite his name appearing all over the internet crediting him. A couple of years later, Quote Investigator also researched the saying and came to the same conclusion as I did while digging deeper and finding possible historical influences. Then in 2019, the Australian Associated Press cited me as one of the sources for disproving Lewis wrote it. And yet, memes are still shared with Lewis's name on it. Who wrote it, you ask? It's from motivational speaker Les Brown and is found in his 1992 book, Live Your Dreams. Lewis never wrote anything close to this quotation, but check out a few expressions loosely related. Did C.S. Lewis really say, "The homemaker has the ultimate career. All other careers exist for one purpose only, and that is to support the ultimate career"? Lewis wrote many profound statements on a variety of topics. However, these words are not among them. But he did pen a similar statement back in 1955 in a letter to Mrs. Johnson. The following is a condensed version. A housewife's work is surely in reality the most important work in the world. Your job is the one for which all others exist. As best as I can determine, someone was imperfectly recalling this statement, which is actually a lot longer. I'll read just part of it. I think I can understand that feeling about a housewife's work being like that of Sisyphus, who was the stone-rolling gentleman. But it is surely in reality the most important work in the world. What do ships, railways, mines, cars, government, etc.? Did C.S. Lewis really say, "Don't shine so others can see you, shine so that through you others can see him"? Have you ever read something and thought, that sounds like it's from the Bible? That's certainly true of this verse, quote attributed to Lewis. After all, Matthew 5:16 says, "In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." But if you didn't know your Bible and found this expression somewhere, you'd likely think someone famous wrote it. My research found several locations citing the source as unknown. But then in 2014, Lewis's name became associated with it online. While Lewis mentions luminosity creatively in a couple of places, in Letters to Malcolm, he quotes part of the verse from Matthew 5. Here's a quick look. Did C.S. Lewis really say? Humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. There is no quotation more strongly defended as being by Lewis than this statement. Some places even tell you where to find it. However, no matter how much you enjoy this expression, and I certainly like it myself, you need to be humble enough to admit Lewis didn't write it when shown proof. The best proof we have is finding it in The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. In this book, there are no quotation marks around it and no reference. That's interesting because there are a lot of footnotes elsewhere in The Purpose-Driven Life, and Warren even refers to Lewis 7 times in other chapters. But he doesn't even mention Lewis in the chapter where this quote is found. Take a look at what Lewis does say about humility in Mere Christianity. These words are close, but not the same as the words falsely attributed to him. Did C.S. Lewis really say, "Be weird, be random, be who you are, because you never know who would love the person you hide"? No one can deny that everyone is unique. In today's world, hiding who you are is viewed as downright weird. Speaking of, did you know weird originally meant having the power to control destiny? These days, weird tends to mean strange, bizarre, offbeat, or unconventional. I mention this because C.S. Lewis would never have used weird in the sense found in this expression. In fact, as recently as 2014, you could find it credited to unknown. However, not long after that, Lewis's name became associated with it. Since then, there have been memes all over the place falsely crediting him as the author, despite the fact it is not in any of his writings. So, be weird and create a meme crediting unknown instead of sharing one with Lewis's name on it. Did C.S. Lewis really say, "Integrity is doing the right thing, even when no one is watching"? Shouldn't part of doing the right thing be checking whether or not the author credited in a quote is correct? In this case, attributing the right author is actually difficult. Other than knowing as good as these words are, Lewis never wrote them. That's because something similar to this expression has been stated by many individuals. This includes a 1996 speech by J.C. Watts and a book from 2003 by Charles Marshall. More recently, a blog post from 2015 uses similar wording in part of its title. Currently, it's a mystery how Lewis's name became associated with this great expression. Take a look at what Lewis does say about this subject from Mere Christianity. These words are not even close to the words falsely attributed to him. Did C.S. Lewis really say, "For broken dreams, the cure is dream again and deeper"? How would you feel if you wrote a 15,000-word poem and someone really liked 10 words from it and shared it all over social media? That's the case with this quotation. Lewis did write those words, but without the context, the original meaning is lost. This expression is from Dimer, a narrative poem C.S. Lewis wrote as a non-Christian. It was first published under the pen name Clive Hamilton. It was republished in 1950 with Lewis's name on it, and he did write a new preface to the work. There's even a study entitled Splendor in the Dark by Jerry Root about Dimer. However, looking at some of the context, see if you can truly understand the meaning. Either way, I wouldn't share the isolated quote given Lewis wrote so many other meaningful words. Did C.S. Lewis really say, "It is Christ himself, not the Bible, who is the true Word of God"? The Bible read in the right spirit and with the guidance of good teachers will bring us to him. Spoiler alert, the short answer is yes. Lewis did pen these words. However, this quote leaves out a lot of words that give a more complete meaning to Lewis's views on the topic. That's why I'm putting an asterisk next to this expression. You may not feel the same way, and that's okay. Here's the context. It's from a personal letter answering the question, is the Bible infallible? The words in red include an extended version of the quote that is sometimes posted on social media. It's understandable what is left out. Lewis brings in the concept of myth, which does not always mean fiction. In the description, I'll link a podcast series that deals with Lewis's views on myth for you to check out. Did C.S. Lewis really say, "Do not let your happiness depend on something you may lose"? Writers need to be careful about giving examples of what they do not agree with. If someone isn't carefully reading what's written, then the reader might falsely think you are agreeing with some notion. That's the case with this quotation. It's found in the final chapter of The Four Loves, but it's a sentiment Lewis does not agree with. Interestingly, this is Lewis's summary of a conclusion St. Augustine made in his Confessions. Lewis is addressing whether a person should risk giving their heart to another because of the potential of the pain of losing them. Lewis paraphrases St. Augustine as suggesting one should not give their heart to anything but God. Lewis disagrees, warning, who could conceivably begin to love God because the security, so to speak, is better? Finally, here's a quote more specifically addressing happiness that people should be sharing. Did C.S. Lewis really say, "A myth is a lie that conveys a truth"? You can choose to agree with this quote or not. That's not the point. The issue is whether Lewis is the author. He did not write this, and so don't claim he did. Isaac Asimov is credited with a statement that this quotation is probably a good paraphrase. Plus, there's a recent article about another person making a more concise statement along these lines. What were Lewis's views on myth? My friend Charlie Starr wrote a book on this topic, so it's impossible to fully explain it here. I did a podcast series with Dr. Starr, and you can see the description for a link. An essay by Lewis entitled Myth Became Fact, found in the book God in the Dock, is a good place to learn more about his views on myth. You're seeing one of the many great statements Lewis makes there in the nearly 2,000-word article. Did C.S. Lewis really say, "Be sure that the patient remains completely fixated on politics"? This is the first part of a lengthier statement that, as far as I can tell, debuted on social media in October 2016. The memes say it is from the Screwtape Letters, a book that was published in 1942. Lewis did begin each letter with "My dear Wormwood," and the last two words in all but one letter are "Uncle Screwtape." That's all that is correct about the images seen online. Lewis never ended the letters with "Keep up the good work." Instead, it was "Your affectionate uncle, Screwtape." Another fishy thing is the letter length. In his book, they are usually in the 800 to 1,000 word range. This letter is just over 100 words. My conclusion is someone was trying to write in the style Lewis did in his book and didn't want to take credit for what should have easily been seen as a copycat. Did C.S. Lewis really say, "There are far, far better things ahead than any we leave behind"? Spoiler alert for this expression. The answer is sort of. That is, the questionable quote adds two words. Lewis actually wrote, "There are better things ahead than any we leave behind." No big deal, right? Except context matters for even the correct quotation. Isolated, they may seem fitting for a graduation card or even words to encourage a person that they will have a better future in this present life. The problem is, in context, these words, found in a letter to Mary Willis Shelburne, are telling her to not be afraid of dying, which she was fearing at the time. So, when you consider the context, it is very unlikely that what Lewis meant is what you take away from the quote when it is this isolated. Did C.S. Lewis really say, "One of the most cowardly things ordinary people do is to shut their eyes to facts"? Everybody repeat after me. It is important to consider the context of a quote. One of my Facebook friends even created a meme to help you remember this. Thanks, David Jack. This quotation is in one of Lewis's books, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, a work of fiction. It's actually a diary entry from Eustace, and he credits it as a statement made by Harold, Eustace's father, whom he always called by his first name. While you could read into the quote that whoever is not agreeing with you is ignoring the facts, calling someone a coward is very unlike what the real Lewis would do. Additionally, if you've read Lewis, then you know the use of ordinary in this quote is not at all like how he would use it. He wrote, "There are no ordinary people." Did C.S. Lewis really say? Education without values, as useful as it is, seems rather to make man a more clever devil. Back in 2014, I remember reading this quotation and thinking how true it was, and I was impressed that it was Lewis who made such a crafty statement. The trouble was, not only did Lewis not say it, but he wouldn't even agree with half the words. Some may object and say, this can't be true, because he makes this point in The Abolition of Man, or at least some memes claim that's the source of this quote. I checked my digital copy and it's not there, nor is it in any of his other writings. Plus, as the late Dr. Bruce Edwards pointed out to me, Lewis didn't believe there is such a thing as education without values, and that even if there was, how could it really be useful? Check out these quotes from other authors that are more similar to what Lewis never wrote. Did C.S. Lewis really say, "Love is never wasted, for its value does not rest upon reciprocity"? Love is supposed to conquer everything, right? If you know your Bible, however, then you are aware there is no verse that says, "Love conquers all." That phrase is from the Latin poet Virgil, and yet because God's love conquers our sin, you might say the Bible would agree with that expression. Or maybe you wouldn't. Likewise, the "love is never wasted" quotation, while not by Lewis, might possibly be something he'd concur with. Even so, let's credit the real author, Neil A. Maxwell, an elder from the Latter-day Saints, or at least that is the most likely source of the quote. Speaking of sources for quotations, the Quotable Lewis, an excellent book for finding verified quotes by him, offers 46 quotes related to love. Here are a couple from Mere Christianity and an essay entitled The World's Last Night. Did C.S. Lewis really say, "The greatest evils in the world will not be carried out by men with guns, but by men in suits sitting behind desks"? The short answer is no, but they are a decent paraphrase of half of what Lewis wrote. I tracked the quote to a 2012 book whose footnote stated it came from a 1983 speech by President Ronald Reagan. This is the famous Evil Empire speech from March 8th, and he does quote C.S. Lewis, and gets it right, except for a minor error. So where does the paraphrase that distorts some of Lewis's thoughts come from? Currently it is unclear, however it is most likely from a newspaper summarizing the speech. In the second preface to the Screwtape Letters, Lewis does write about the greatest evil, but he doesn't contrast it with guns. Additionally, what Lewis writes is 3 times the length of the fake quote. Did C.S. Lewis really say, "Isn't it funny how, day by day, nothing changes, but when you look back, everything is different"? There's a funny thing about this expression. When I look back on my research and the feedback I've received, a lot has changed. Initially, it seemed this quote might be from Prince Caspian, either the book or movie. It wasn't, nor was it in any other Narnia book or movie. In the last few years, I've seen a single image suggesting it comes from the comic strip Calvin and Hobbes. However, the image on social media doesn't give a date for the comic. Then these first two panes from a 1995 strip reveal wording by Calvin that is, well, different. Either way, Bill Watterson, the cartoonist who created Calvin and Hobbes, should have credit for the expression. However, Lewis did write something similar in Mere Christianity that could have been the inspiration for him. Did C.S. Lewis really say, "My prayer is that when I die, all of hell rejoices that I am out of the fight"? Lewis wrote about prayer various times, and he also dealt with hell in a variety of writings. However, notice the word rejoices in this quote. Would Lewis ever say hell rejoices? Back in early 2017, when I wrote about this expression, I was fortunate enough to discover a site that addressed it earlier. A missionary named Charles Thomas Studd is credited with writing the similar expression, "I pray that when I die, all of hell will rejoice that I am out of the fight." C.T. Studd was born in the UK, and he died in 1931. This quotation might remind you of a comparable Irish saying, "May you be in heaven a full half hour before the devil knows you're dead." Could it be the reason Lewis's name became associated with the variation by C.T. Studd was because Lewis was born in Ireland? Thanks for watching. Check the description for links to any article versions done on these quotes, and for links to other 1-minute shorts already available for watching. Finally, consider getting a copy of my book that explores 75 quotes.